Hello everyone, we kind of have two launches today. First and foremost, we're going to take a look at the Mobula 8 Freestyle HD. This has an HDZero camera inside of it. So you'll need to have HDZero goggles, whether you have the Slimline goggles, the Box Pro goggles, or a VRX connected through HDMI to some other sort of goggles. But also inside is a new all-in-one. It's the AIO 15 or AIO 15. HDZero right inside of the AIO, and this time it's 2 to 3S, and each ESC is 15 amps. So you could use that on something much larger than this, have an ultra fast, ultra light, ultra agile build of your very own. If you're interested in either one of these products, there'll be links down in the video description as we go through the video and all the different things I have to show you, which there's one more sneak thing that I don't think I've covered very well in the past that we'll cover after the flights. We'll also talk about the pre-tariff price, because tariffs change. The Mobula line can be kind of confusing, so we're going to go through them real quick, at least the most recent stuff. This is the Mobula 6 2024 edition. This is analog, so not HDZero. Traditional whoop. This is the Mobula 6 Freestyle HD. There's also a race edition, just different KV in the motors. And this little camera is the Lux camera. Then we have the Mobula 7 Freestyle HD edition, so of course bigger props. All-in-one flight controller. That is not the same as what we've got on our current edition. This is 1S, all of these up to this point. And of course, we have the Mobula 8 DJI 04 edition, which we've covered not too long ago. This one, of course, is not HDZero. It requires the DJI goggles to fly that. And I've got an interesting comparison between these two. Important to note that we do have motor connectors on the bottom, and yeah, no USB port, no traditional USB port. We're seeing this more and more, and they ship with a little dongle that we connect to there, and that is HDZero branded, because the all-in-one flight controller is a collaboration between HDZero and HappyModel. So that gives us a little extra clearance to make sure when we are putting our 2S batteries in the battery tray that we don't snap that USB port. I think it's called the Mobula 8 because it's not a traditional 75mm. It's got 45mm HQ props. The AIO 15 or 15 from HDZero and HappyModel has not only the HDZero to up to 200 milliwatt VTX built in, but it has ExpressLRS control link built right into it, and that is serial based, so you're able to update that via Wi-Fi separate of Betaflight. And I previously mentioned 15 amp ESCs for each one of your motors, and it is 2 to 3S compatible. As far as the processor on this, it is G4 based, so we have that recent iteration on our processors to help with our fine tuning and control. As I mentioned previously, it's not a Mobula 7, it's a Mobula 8 Freestyle HD. And motor post to motor post, it is 80mm. It weighs about 33.5 grams. Compared to the DJI version, it's 38.2 grams, almost 38.3. I use these batteries for my flights as well as others of various sorts of color schemes, kind of all the same sort of batteries. For example, this G&B 550 is 17mm wide and 12mm tall. Beta FPV lava battery is almost 16mm wide and just about 14mm tall. With the Beta FPV Lava battery, it weighs 59.62 grams. With the G&B 550, it weighs 62.2 grams. And with this older style G&B 450, it weighs 60.42 grams. We do also get an extra set of props. We get some extra screws that screw the canopy down. We get a little tiny screwdriver and the prop remover that I never use. It does come with an extra camera mount, but I broke mine. You can see this arm fell right off. And underneath it did have 2 pieces of foam. You can see with mine, I replaced mine with gray foam just to put some fresh stuff since I had to replace the camera mount anyways. And last but not least, we have 2 sheets of stickers. We're going to start with the outside flight. I've got my OSD a little bit mixed up, and I did the entire time I've been flying this, which is getting close to 2.5 weeks, I think, something like that. So in the bottom left, I have my numbers inverted if you're used to how I typically do it. So the overall battery voltage I normally have at the bottom, which is the bigger number, but it's on top this time, so the average cell per count voltage is on the bottom and the total battery voltage is on top. Some weather data, because that's something that I try to report. We have 88 degrees, a really nice day, kind of warm, muggy, sticky, low winds 5 to 7 miles an hour. That's pretty low for my area. Of course, as I always say, I do have some protection for the wind. The way they measure that versus what I actually feel is going to be different. I did note that I did feel a breeze occasionally on my skin where I'm sitting close to the house. So my overall impression of this, and the reason why we're starting outside, is for most people, this is going to be something that you're probably going to fly outside. Sure, you can fly it inside, and I have an inside flight. It flies for a very long time as well on a 450 or a 550. You'll get what I think is really good flight time, and you'll see the end of this flight time come up as well as our inside flight to give you some idea of how much throttle I've used in my flights and the overall flight times I get. I didn't find too much issue, or really any issue, with the PID tune. That's always subjective. You know, some people might want a smoother PID tune, so it is a little bit more cinematic. You can always relax things using the master slider, or you might want something that's a little bit more quicker to respond. So you might move feed forward up or one of the other PIDs. Of course, what I'm looking for is basic flight maneuvers and how does it handle. One of the things that I kind of measure is the dives or the power loops that I do, and when I don't do them well, how does it handle that prop wash that I can sometimes get when I come in a little bit too flat. But I think I skipped right over why I'm flying it outside first. Well, it's 2S, so it's going to be mostly an outside flyer, I think, for the masses. Of course, if you've got the skill set, you can fly it inside and rip it around to your heart's desire. That's up to you to make a choice. But I think when most people are looking at it, it's probably going to be a flyer like this, a backyard, a park flyer, something small, light, relatively quiet, and very, very safe because of its overall low weight and prop protection. Of course, if you're wanting to do training and you want to do it inside, this does have a nice wide camera view, although the camera is not camera angle adjustable. So this is the camera angle that you have unless you go out online or you create a 3D print camera mount that you have printed up, or you print it yourself and then mount it. So that is the one drawback, because I oftentimes talk about camera angle and adjustments. For me, I would like to have more camera angle outside and, of course, less camera angle inside, which makes it a little bit more controllable inside. But we don't have that out of the box. They do include 2 camera mounts, as I should have said during the quick specs. I broke one. You'll get another one that I swapped to in my case. I broke it inside, by the way, after some kind of speed run testing, which I oftentimes do just to test my own skills. And I had a number of crashes, and eventually I noticed the camera wasn't sitting flat on my next battery plug-in. I was like, oh dang. And then I saw where the camera mount had broken. Also, I have a little bit of the wire insulation on the yellow signal wire, you may have noticed, that has kind of frayed away a little bit. So that's something else that we need to be mindful in these whoops, especially when we have our silicone-based wires, which are my preferred kind of wire, underneath something else, whether it's a camera mount or something else altogether, that when you're banging around on that can cause some insulation wire damage. So really, in my case, I think I probably should replace, or I should just throw some heat shrink over that particular wire so that it doesn't come in contact with some sort of electrical component, or, you know, take further damage and then cause a short. Because the all-in-one is another feature that you might be considering for your builds, because it is 2 and 3S. So, and with the combination of the right motors KV and the motors pulling amps with a certain kind of prop, you can design this around a number of different, not just whoop factors. Maybe you want to go up to a 2-inch, but maybe you want to do something that's open prop with this AIO 15. Flight ended 428, getting after the throttle pretty good there, and didn't quite get back to 3.5 volts per cell. Taking off on our inside flight. Now this one, I consider this a little bit of a modest flight, because I think with the advancement of our 1S quads and our 65 millimeters, that I can fly more aggressively because we have a larger margin for error. I can go heavier on the throttle. They're slightly more agile just because they're smaller and lighter. That I can go faster inside with the 65 millimeter. Especially our super light traditional analog 65 millimeters. But this one's HDZero, so our camera weighs a little bit more than our traditional whoop cams, but I think the camera image is much, much better. If you're not familiar with the Lux camera from HDZero, I have a full review of that, as well as a new IO that launched at the same time, down in the video description. The one more thing I have to show you after this is more outside flight, so I would suggest Uh, I've covered it lightly, I think, in the past, but if you haven't seen the HDZero Lux camera in very much detail, you certainly should. Something else that you'll notice about the camera image is that the colors and stuff kind of shift. Of course, I did not tune this camera. I have, tuned my own cameras, and when I tune them for the basement and the lighting that I have in the basement and the coloration that I have in the basement, it doesn't look as good upstairs. And then when I tune it for the upstairs, then it doesn't look as good downstairs. So there is a lot of controls that we have on this Lux camera that we can do right from our remote. Do keep a fan or air movement on the AIO so it doesn't overheat on you, but you can make a number of different color image control changes to suit your own visual needs. You can see that my wife recently moved that dining room table around, which kind of threw my flow off a little bit, but not terribly. I adjusted after a series of flights to not just a slightly different flight path, but I have normally when I go from that dining room area through that doorway, there's a chair gap that I kind of go down through, and that's not there anymore. So that caught me out a few times. And then also when I swoop around the backside, I'm just not used to that one chair that's currently out in that position, kind of in that area that bows out to that bay window. That caught me out a few times as well. But I did some speed runs, and that's where I kind of broke my camera, was during those speed runs. And I've got some proximity footage, so if you're wanting something like this and you're like, oh, can I fly it slow? Can I do shooting small gaps? Like I do a lot of flying around that table with those chairs. They have a lot of nice gaps in there. I do go through the stools, I believe, as well. And I'll show you that in kind of a picture-in-picture when we get down to the finer look at the desk if you want to see a different sort of flight. And slower flights inside with a 450 go on for, at least for me and my batteries, their health and quality and care, go on for 5.5 minutes inside. Outside cruising around, I think I only did one battery, and that battery didn't show me what I thought it should have compared to what I had inside. So I think that battery might have been one that had been well used and loved and seen much flight time. So I'm going to have to reserve that and not report that, because I don't think that would be accurate. But if I can fly for 5.5 minutes on a 450 inside, if you're cruising outside and you use a 550, I would encourage you to get either the red G&B label or the green labeled one. It's kind of a lime green or a lighter green, or get the Beta FPV lava batteries. They're also a high quality battery. Get one of those batteries, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get 6 minutes, maybe even cruising upwards of 6.5 minutes outside. If you're not familiar with HDZero, you might be wondering about that very top row of OSD elements. Those are HDZero specific items. You see the fan, you see the padlock, you see the temperature, you see my goggle voltage, and then on the right hand side you see that it's recording, the REC, and then you see the 4 antennas from the goggles and how they're receiving the signal. That is HDZero specific, again, because this is an HDZero based video system on the Mobula 8 Freestyle HD. There is not a race edition, so unlike the Mobula 6 Freestyle and 8 Race Edition HD, there's just this one edition. And I do think I forgot to mention the motors, and those are 1102 13,500 kV. If I didn't go back and change my editing already out, because it just occurred to me that I don't think we even looked at the motors, but we'll certainly get another look at them. And something else about this flight, you can see where I have a number of near misses or near hits, however you want to phrase those, where I glance off walls. I glanced off the lamp here just a moment ago, and then I had one crash, and then when I go to land, I'm going to have one more crash, which is one of those fun moments when you're just flying and you're kind of just escaping the moment, and you crash and you think it's silly and you just laugh. And so accordingly, I have that moment and I laugh at myself because I fly and crash when I'm going so slow, just coming in for a little simple landing. But that happens. That's part of the fun of FPV, is the silliness that takes place whenever we're having a good time. You can see there the flight's over 5 minutes. 5 minutes and 19 seconds, 5 minutes and 23 seconds, and it's going to end here in just a minute. Again, this is on the Beta FPV Lava 450. And yeah. And a little proof of concept that it flips over nice and easy on the slick floor, yeah, especially with that 2S power. You can see I've got a collared shirt on, so it's a lunchtime flight, and my audio camera sitting right in front of me. Something else I want to show you before we get back to the desk is a nighttime sample. So this presents almost like daytime, and there's no flight audio for this. This is the evening time. You can see in the house we've got lights on and stuff, but this is actually 25 minutes after official sundown. And I did it intentionally after sundown because I knew this camera does well, and I've covered this in the past. When it comes to nighttime flights, especially in those warmer seasons, like right now here in the US, it's summertime, and so the temperatures are definitely higher, although we haven't had anything in the hundreds yet. We've hit 90 a few times, so you might be more up to flying after, you know, a certain period of day where the temperature comes down for you. And it looks like similar to daytime. And it's not. And I'll show you how it's not daytime in here in just a minute. We did some cleanup between the fences. So I flew back there because I had kind of forgotten, honestly, I had forgotten that the Lux camera does so well with low light as well. And I kind of cruised back and forth, just being surprised and revisiting how this does so well as we kind of sit underneath the cabana area. It's relatively dark. Our cameras do well, or I shouldn't say our cameras in general. Some FPV cameras do well, but like our cell phones are pretty amazing when it comes to low light performance nowadays, at least the current generation. Let's end there before I get myself into any more hot water flying around the trees. I might end up getting tangled up here if we watch too long. But I want to show you a sample that came within moments of this flight ending with the DJI 4. And yeah, this is the 04, and we know that the 04 doesn't do well in low light. So I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody who likes to fly DJI. I wanted to give you a comparison that in the goggles, especially when I face the house, you can tell from the flying. I am not comfortable, and of course this was within minutes of flying the Lux camera. As I go around this tree over here, I feel like I'm almost, you know, blind when I'm flying. I could barely make stuff out. I'm certainly not confident. So this flight was very, very short. Also from my iPhone, I have a sample, and this is just me panning around. And now this looks more, albeit, you know, iPhones are what, $1,200 or something like that. This looks much more comparable to what we saw in the HDZero camera. But I wanted to give you another sample as well as just not throw shade at the 04. So give you a full idea of the light out. And I'll play some proximity footage that I have up here for those that like to do gap shooting and whatnot. As far as damage goes, I've already reported that. It's just this one arm that snapped off here. Oh, I guess I didn't necessarily report it real closely. Hopefully, let me zoom in here. I've over-zoomed, but right kind of at the end of my finger, you can see that silver, and you can see where the wire kind of got split, and you can see a little bit of that silver kind of appearing from inside there. So I should probably take a soldering iron out, disconnect this wire, and at the very least put some heat shrink over that so it doesn't come in contact with anything else. That's the damage that I have to report. Again, when it comes to batteries, I'll get a lot of questions on those. That's why I measured them. The GMB 550s, the red and the green labeled ones, those are the ones that I prefer. Those are the ones I'm recommending. Also, this Lava 450, you can get I think Beta FPV has a 550 of this as well. Pretty high quality battery. I've had a lot of good flights, good performance on this. This older 450, these are actually pretty good, but they're kind of hard to get your hands on, and I don't know that sometimes I've seen this older style sometimes be very comparative to this style, but I've also seen them where I've been disappointed out of the box. So that's my own experience, but these are also viable, and they definitely do fit in the battery tray, which is the same as it was for the DJI, the Mobula 8 DJI 4 edition. But obviously, you know, we've got a much prouder camera up here with that second layer than we do with the HDZero version. Also, a lot of people, and myself included, would get concerned about this camera, and as I've pointed out, I've got a couple of these Lux cameras, and they are all been exposed, but you can take one of the older canopies. I just happen to have a bag of them. I wonder if I thought at one point in time I modified one of these to show you. Here, let me just go through here. So I couldn't find one I modified, and this is an older style Mobula 6, I believe, canopy. You could take this or something else like it, I think, and then carve out the front so that the camera peeks out a little bit, and you can mount this cleanly down to give yourself a little bit of overtop protection. So you're really just using this almost like a turtle shell, so you wouldn't really be using the front part. You'd just be using the very highest part as well as the back. And this doesn't have a screw up front, so shaving off the front is kind of why you would use this style, where is if you go with some of the others, they have a mount point up front. You'd actually be cutting a little bit more of the substantial structure, and that would give you a little bit more of peace of mind that when you bonk this thing, that you have this plastic shell over the top. Of course, you know, if you've got a 3D printer, you might be able to design something up that not only protects this top plastic housing, which has proved to be robust for me, but maybe give yourself a little bit more camera protection, or because it's printed in TPU but yet doesn't give you any jello, maybe it allows a little camera movement, so it just absorbs a little bit of that impact. A couple of things. The battery mounting, you notice there's no posts or anything. What they actually kind of did was just built up his front and back parts, so when you put your battery through here, that it rests on the frame, so it wouldn't bonk into that USB port. You can't even see in there really. But a traditional USB port, I think, would get awful close to this edge back here that protects it. So I think it's a fitting, and it's something that we've been seeing more and more with all-in-ones, that the USB port actually has this sort of connection back here that we have to use with the dongle. Although I'll issue the warning, you know, don't lose this, because, you know, if you need to get it access to flash, or you have some sort of issue and you need to do some diagnostics and connect to Betaflight or to Bluejay or anything like that, this is going to be critical for those moments post-flight or troubleshooting. So those can, I'll tell you this, Beta FPV one, it works too, because I plugged it in a few times. Others probably work as well. I think they're pretty uniform as far as what they're using for connections. But these batteries fit pretty well. Of course, if you have any fraying of your plastic outer layer, that can be an issue. All it's separate, but this one fits about the same. And then the Lava 450s. I think the 550s are just longer versions of the 450s, but you know, check me on that. These are probably the tightest of these three that I have out. And of course, I didn't just use 3 batteries for the review. I used a bunch of batteries. I've got an entire bag that's probably got, of the batteries I used, I probably used about 15 different batteries of this ilk. Those are the batteries I like to fly. A question that could come up is, you know, does the camera hit? It can, but it doesn't rest on that, especially with the foam that's underneath here. So the foam would adjust. Of course, it comes with its own foam. I just, because I had the canopy off, I refreshed that using my own foam that's sticky on one side, and I left the protective coating on the other that to protect our components. You can see we've got our Express LRS antenna tucked in over here, and then it kind of the corner comes up right here. Our wires are underneath. These wires, hopefully you can tell, aren't soldered to the bottom of the PCB. It's just the lower part of the PCB. Hopefully that makes sense. So if this is the PCB, it doesn't solder here, but it solders like here. So that solder joint wouldn't be something that you're coming down on when you crash repeatedly. Of course, we've got a micro UFL, and they have this little 3D print that holds the antenna. That has become an issue where we know that we get our best possible reception when this antenna isn't laying across the board when it comes to these HDZero all-in-ones. Something to note there. You can do soldering. It looks like to me, if you want to solder motor wires, so you want to remove those, but I suspect the people that would do that have already seen enough in order to know that they can do that as well. The motors, to take a little bit of a look, hopefully you can see in there, HappyModel branded RS1102, 13,500 kV. Look about like you'd expect. Let me pop a prop off here. This is how I take props off. I hold the bell and twist and turn and pull. It's got a little bit of a gunmetal coating to it. Almost a blue tint, the gunmetal. Maybe it's just the blue matte that I have. But that's a little bit of a look at the motor. Oh, and 1.5 millimeter shafts as well. That might be an important note, but I suspect most of the people that know 1102 motors probably know that. I didn't highlight it, but the last little thing, you know, it's got an XT30 connection down here. Don't mistake that for an XT60 because I don't have a point of reference out here. I do notice that when I put in the battery that sometimes I have to push this down in order to get kind of a smooth battery insert going, because sometimes that wire will kind of be in a spot where it'll stop the battery from going in. Just a little tiny thing I noticed during my time of flying this particular one around. You may have noticed my little rubber band here. That's a loom band. It's from a kit that kids used to make, like bracelets and stuff. Maybe it's still a thing. Years ago, like 7 years ago, I bought a bag of 500 of those off of eBay for like, I don't know, $5 or something like that. So I'm still working on that band. But, you know, any little rubber band that you might have, I put that on there not because the camera was coming out. I put that on there as my own sort of peace of mind, because when I had a prototype, I think it was a Mobula 6, I did have issues with the camera sliding out the back end, and then I would see the camera protection in my view. So in order to fly more like I wanted to unobstructed view, I would have to stop, push the camera back in, make sure it clipped on the sides. So I started putting a little band on the Lux camera mount back when I was doing that Mobula 6. Pricing. Again, there'll be links down in the video description if you're interested in the AIO 15 or 1.5. Again, that's 2 to 3S. It is a 15 amp ESC, built-in Express LRS that is serial-based, so you can update it via Wi-Fi or separately of Betaflight. It's got BlueJay already pre-installed, which is kind of standard anymore. It's got the HDZero VTX up to 200 milliwatts. I don't think it includes the camera. From the notes that I have, does not mention the Lux camera. The AIO itself, pre-tariff price, is supposed to launch, pre-tariff price, let me say that again, at $110. So depending upon where you're at, the pre-tariff thing may not mean anything. But if you're subject to tariffs, you'll know that it starts at $110. Again, I don't think it comes with the HDZero or the Lux camera, but if you purchase the Mobula 8 Freestyle HD, it does come with the Lux camera, obviously, and everything else I've shown you here. And the pre-tariff price should be $210 for this. Again, this is HDZero specific, so you have to have HDZero goggles, whether it's the box goggles or the smaller goggles, or a VRX connected via HDMI to another set of goggles in order to fly this. It doesn't work with analog, it doesn't work with walk snail, it doesn't work with DJI goggles. So we have a lot of great options with our video systems now, but if you want to fly more than one, it just means you got to have deeper pockets or a larger bank account. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the Mobula 8 Freestyle HD, please let me know down in that comment section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.